Lying to yourself has a deep, far-reaching impact on every aspect of your life. It's not just about the little white lies you tell yourself to get through the day. We're talking about a fundamental disconnect between every step towards self-honesty is a step towards a more authentic, fulfilling life. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. Have a conversation with your future self. Close your eyes and imagine yourself 5, 10, 20 years from now. And what would that version of you say to the current you? What advice would they give? Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. And today we're going to talk about lying to yourself. I just have one goal with this episode: to convince you to stop lying to yourself. This is an epidemic. Somebody will say something to me, and then I will see them doing the absolute opposite. Picture this: a man standing in front of his bathroom mirror, patting his noticeably protruding belly. He smiles and thinks to himself, "I'm in pretty good shape for my age." Later that day, he's out of breath climbing a single flight of stairs and decides to take the elevator instead. And that night, he orders takeout for the third time this week, assuring himself it's just because he's been too busy to cook. This man is just making excuses. He's lying to himself, and he is not alone. We're going to explore how the lies you tell yourself shape your reality, often in ways you don't even realize. You see, what you are and who you are is infinitely more important than what you claim to be. Yet all around us, people are walking around like Jekyll and Hyde, presenting one version of themselves to the world while hiding another. This isn't just about calling out our lies, it's about understanding why we do it, how it impacts us, and most importantly, how we can break free from this self-imposed prison of deception. Do you remember the first time that you lied? Or do you remember the first time you understood what a lie was? We begin to lie at a very young age. And over time, we are constantly battling with ourselves and others and the world about the truth. What is the truth to ourselves and others? And if we believe in a truth, it can create universes. But it has become a new custom to lie. We see it all the time in politics, in the mainstream media. It's become a device. People will lie all the time. We live in a world of lies. How can we understand the truth if we are lying to ourselves? Lying to yourself has a deep, far-reaching impact on every aspect of your life. It's not just about the little white lies you tell yourself to get through the day. We're talking about a fundamental disconnect between who you truly are and who you pretend to be. A disconnect that can derail our personal growth, relationships, and even our ability to shape our own reality. Now, this may contradict. Neville Goddard or Joseph Murphy tell us to believe in a reality even though it's not true. So essentially, you have to sort of lie to yourself for a given period of time until it is real. Why is it okay for us to say we can do that, and then on the other hand, say it's not okay to lie? If that's the case, we should lie all the time. But if we are telling ourselves what to believe, if we are affirming thoughts in our mind, then we have to trust ourselves. And if we can't trust ourselves, we can't trust anyone. Awareness is the first step to change. At its core, self-deception is the act of lying to yourself, believing something that isn't true, despite evidence to the contrary. It's a psychological defense mechanism that allows you to avoid uncomfortable truths about yourself or your situation. Self-deception isn't always as obvious as your friend in the mirror that we met earlier. It can be subtle insidious, and often we're not even aware we're doing it. It's like wearing a pair of tinted glasses. Everything you see is colored by your own biases and beliefs, whether they're accurate or not. Let's take a look at some common examples to really understand what we're talking about. First, we have the procrastinator's paradox. Imagine a college student with a big paper due in 2 weeks. She tells herself, "I work better under pressure," and puts off starting the assignment. As the deadline looms, she becomes increasingly stressed but still doesn't start, repeating the mantra that she'll produce better work at the last minute. In reality, she's afraid of not meeting her own high standards and uses procrastination as a built-in excuse. Another classic example is the relationship blindfold. You meet someone who has been in a toxic relationship for years, and despite their partner's constant criticism and emotional manipulation, they convince themselves, "Oh, she's just high standard. She cares about me." They ignore the advice from friends and family, believing that their love is unique and misunderstood. But deep down, they fear being alone and would rather live with the harmful illusion of emotional manipulation and constant criticism than face the truth. Or consider Lisa, a talented artist working a corporate job she hates. She tells herself, "I'm not good enough to make it as a full-time artist, and a stable job is more important than pursuing my passion." In reality, Lisa's afraid of failure and uncertainty that comes with chasing her dreams, and her self-deception keeps her in a safe but unfulfilling career path. Or think about Mike, who's been gaining weight steadily for years. He looks at old pictures and thinks, "I haven't changed that much," and tells himself he's still as fit as he was in his 20s. He ignores his doctor's warnings about his blood pressure and cholesterol, convinced that his occasional jog makes up for his otherwise sedentary lifestyle. This self-deception allows him to avoid confronting the need for significant lifestyle changes. This is happening all the time, on a subtle and very significant level. We must understand it. There's some common areas where these lies tend to crop up in your life. Politics is a breeding ground for self-deception. So many times I see people fall into the trap of confirmation bias, seeking out information that supports your existing beliefs and dismissing anything that contradicts them. For example, someone might ignore credible reports of corruption from their preferred political party, convincing themselves that it's just propaganda from the opposition. This self-deception allows you to maintain your worldview without the discomfort of challenging your beliefs. Or in a relationship we touched on earlier, but it bears repeating. Relationships are a major area for self-deception. We might tell ourselves that a friendship is stronger than it really is, ignoring signs of toxicity. In families, we might downplay dysfunction, telling ourselves that's just how families are. These self-deceptions often stem from a fear of loneliness or conflict, leading us to maintain harmful relationships rather than face difficult truths. Our professional lives are rife with opportunity for self-deception. We might overestimate our skills, telling ourselves we're indispensable to our company when we're actually underperforming. Or like our earlier example, we might underestimate our abilities, convincing ourselves we're not qualified for that promotion or career change. This self-deception often comes from a place of either inflated ego or a deep-seated insecurity. You see it all the time in every area of your life, from health to finances to personal growth. We want to be able to imagine futures that may not be likely, but at the same time, we need to be honest about what we have available, what resources that we have. So there's this seeming contradiction between lying and imagining, and we have to understand what is happening in between these parts. The common thread is that self-deception serves a purpose, at least in the short term. It protects your ego. It shields you from uncomfortable truths and allows you to avoid difficult decisions or changes. But the long-term costs of these deceptions far outweigh any temporary comfort they provide. The long-term cost is a loss of your power. You might remember the story of Jekyll and Hyde, a respectable doctor who transforms into a violent alter ego. While our own experiences may not be so dramatic, many of us are living our own version of this tale. The Jekyll and Hyde syndrome in self-deception refers to the phenomenon of maintaining two versions of yourself: the Jekyll who you claim to be or aspire to be, and the Hyde who you actually are in your thoughts and actions. Our Jekyll is the idealized version of ourselves. It's the person we present to the world, the one we claim to be in our social media posts, in job interviews, or even in our own minds. This version might claim to be ambitious, kind, health conscious, or any number of positive attributes. Our Hyde, on the other hand, is the reality of our thoughts, actions, and habits, what we really think about ourselves. This is the version that procrastinates, that judges others harshly, or indulges in behaviors we know aren't good for us. Jekyll says, "I'm a great listener and a supportive friend." The Hyde reality is you often zone out when friends are talking and frequently steer conversations back to your own problems. Jekyll says, "I'm committed to personal growth and learning," and the Hyde reality is you buy self-help books but never read past the first chapter, always finding excuses not to do the work. Or Jekyll says, "I'm environmentally conscious and care about sustainability." And the Hyde reality is you regularly choose convenience over eco-friendly options and rarely make efforts to reduce your carbon footprint. The problem isn't just that these two versions exist, it's that we often aren't aware of the discrepancy. We generally believe we are Jekyll, while our Hyde operates behind the scenes, often unconsciously. This internal conflict creates a state of cognitive dissonance. We are constantly trying to reconcile our idealized self-image with our actual behaviors, which leads to stress, anxiety, and a fragmented sense of self. Living with this duality makes it incredibly difficult to grow and change. How can we improve if we're not honest about where we're starting from? How can we set realistic goals if we're not clear on the true capabilities and limitations? The Jekyll and Hyde syndrome is more than just hypocrisy or occasional white lies. It's a pervasive state of self-deception that affects how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, and how we navigate the world. Breaking free from this syndrome requires radical honesty with ourselves. It means being willing to look at our Hyde, our flaws, our inconsistencies, our less flattering qualities without flinching away. It means aligning our actions with our stated values and being willing to admit when. Remember, the goal isn't to be perfect. It's to be authentic, to narrow the gap between who we claim to be and who we really are. Only then we can begin to create meaningful change in our lives and truly become the person we aspire to be. You must understand authenticity versus pretense. You know that feeling. When you're at a party laughing at jokes you don't find funny or nodding along to opinions you don't agree with. That's pretense. It's exhausting. And that's because you're not being true to yourself by putting on a show, and deep down, it doesn't feel good. Now imagine the opposite. Picture yourself with people who get your quirks, appreciate your honesty, and love you for who you are. That's authenticity. It's like taking a deep breath after holding it in for a long time. When you're authentic, you're not wasting energy on being someone you're not, you're just you. Being authentic isn't always easy. Sometimes it means admitting things about yourself that you'd rather not face. Maybe you're not as kind as you'd like to think, or you're not as hardworking as you claim to be. Facing these truths can be uncomfortable, but it's the only way to grow. This brings us to the power of self-awareness. Think of self-awareness as your internal GPS. Without it, you're just wandering around, hoping to end up somewhere good. But when you're self-aware, you know exactly where you are, where you want to go, and what's standing in your way. Developing self-awareness is like working out a muscle. It takes practice. You've got to pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions. Why did that comment bother you so much? Why do you keep putting off that important task? The more you ask these questions, the more you understand yourself. Let me tell you, understanding yourself is a superpower. It's like having the cheat codes to your own life. You start making better decisions, managing your emotions more effectively, and even becoming a better leader. Because here's the truth, you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. Think about the last time you tried to improve something about yourself. Maybe you wanted to get in shape or learn a new skill. How did it go? If you weren't honest with yourself from the starting point, your motivation or the challenges you face, I bet it was a struggle. But when you're honest with yourself, personal growth becomes much more achievable. You set realistic goals because you know your true abilities. You persist through challenges because you understand your real motivations. And when you fail, it doesn't devastate you because you're not attached to some idealized version of yourself. And your relationships, they transform when you start being honest with yourself. Think about it. How can you truly be honest with someone else if you're not even honest with yourself? When you're self-honest, you build trust. You're able to be vulnerable and you set healthy boundaries. You become more empathetic too, because you understand that everyone's dealing with their own stuff. Imagine a relationship where both people are totally honest with themselves and each other. No games, no hidden resentments, just open communication and mutual understanding. Sounds pretty good, right? Look, I'm not saying self-honesty is always comfortable. Sometimes it's painful, but it's always worth it. It's the key to living authentically, growing continuously, and building relationships that truly fulfill you. The other thing is, who are you hanging out with? Who are you listening to? If you're constantly listening to someone that lies all the time, then you are lying to yourself, and you'll find yourself to be somewhat deceitful to other people in general. Like attracts like. So if you want honest people in your life, and you want to be honest with yourself, they go together. You don't choose to listen to people that you know are constantly lying. You work with people that resonate with you, and when they lie on a regular basis, you simply choose not to be around that person. They move outside of your energy field. This is important when it comes to creating your reality. Think about it like this. Two people can go through this exact same event and come away with completely different experiences. Why? Because they're viewing it through different lenses shaped by their beliefs and past experiences. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people starting new jobs. One believes they're capable and deserving of success. The other, they're constantly doubting themselves, convinced they're an imposter. Now, they might face the same challenges, but their experiences will be worlds apart. The confident person will see obstacles as opportunities to learn, and the self-doubter will see challenges as confirmation of their inadequacy. This is the power of creating your own reality. Your beliefs and expectations act like a filter, coloring everything you experience. Here's where it gets tricky. This process happens whether you're aware of it or not. You're constantly creating a reality, even when you don't realize it. So if you choose to have a reality where everybody's lying to you, part of that is in the choice of who you choose to listen to read, to have around, to support. So how does self-deception mess with this process? It's like trying to navigate with a faulty map. When you're not honest with yourself, you're operating based on false information. You might think you're headed toward success, but if you're lying to yourself about your abilities, your motivations, or the challenges you face, you're setting yourself up for a rude awakening. If you're honest with yourself about your abilities and your motivations, you will make the right choices to move forward in achieving your goal. Self-deception is like a fog that obscures your true path. It makes you miss opportunities because you're not seeing things clearly. It leads you to make decisions that aren't aligned with your authentic self. And worst of all, it keeps you stuck in patterns that don't serve you because you're not honest about what's really going on. Your beliefs are like the operating system of your mind. They're running in the background, influencing everything you do, often without you even noticing. Many of these beliefs were installed when you were too young to question them. They come from your parents, your teachers, your early experiences, and unless you've done the work and examine and update them, they're still running the show. These beliefs shape your reality in powerful ways. If you believe the world is a hostile place, guess what? You'll find evidence of that everywhere you look. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll consciously sabotage your own success. Your beliefs create a self-fulfilling prophecy, shaping your actions and perceptions to confirm what you already believe to be true. But here's where it gets interesting and challenging There's often a discord between our conscious claims and our subconscious beliefs. This is where the rubber meets the road when it comes to self-deception and reality creation. You might consciously claim that you want success, but you have a subconscious belief that you don't deserve it. Guess which one wins out? The subconscious belief wins out every time. This discord creates a sort of internal tug of war. You're trying to move in one direction consciously, but your subconscious is pulling you in another. It's exhausting, and it's why so many people feel stuck despite their best effort to change. Let's say you consciously claim you want a loving, committed relationship, but deep down, you have a subconscious belief that you're unlovable. What happens? You might find yourself pushing away anyone who gets too close or attracting partners who aren't emotionally available. Your reality aligns with your subconscious belief, not your conscious desire. You are lying to yourself. So what can we do about this? The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to the gap between what you say you want and what you actually experience in your life. Where are the inconsistencies? Why is it you're imagining one thing but something else is happening? This gap between what is happening in your life and what you're trying to imagine tells you everything you need to know about what's going on in your subconscious. What patterns keep repeating despite your best efforts to change them? The next step is courage, the courage to be ruthlessly honest with yourself. What are the beliefs lurking beneath the surface that might be sabotaging you? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about shining a light on these hidden beliefs so you can start to change them. Remember, your reality is a reflection of your deepest, most firmly held beliefs. If you want to change your reality, you've got to be willing to examine and update these beliefs. But if all you're listening to is people that knowingly lie, and if you're constantly lying to yourself, you're incapable of examining and updating those beliefs. So you must be ruthless. I choose not to listen to a musician if they're a liar. I choose not to read a writer when they're actual liars. Now, writing an imagined fiction is not a lie. Those are different things. There's not a claim that it's true. So I'm constantly looking for the truth and imagining something better. If you want to change your reality, you've got to examine this. It's not easy, but when you align your conscious desires with your subconscious beliefs, that's when the magic happens. That's when you truly start creating the reality that you want. Usually the liar part of you is in your mind, and it's in your ego. And if you embrace that part of you, you are ignoring the more important, more powerful part of you, which is your heart, your subconscious. So you must make it an intention, an effort to stop lying to yourself, because then you can believe the truth about who you truly are. I want you to start questioning your reality. Is it serving you? Is it aligned with who you truly are or what you truly want? And most importantly, are you being completely honest with yourself about what's really going on? Because that's honesty. It's the key to unlocking the reality you've always dreamed of. What happens when we lie to ourselves? The consequences go deeper than you think. First, let's talk about stress. You know that feeling when you're juggling too many balls and you're terrified you're going to drop one. That's what lying to yourself does to your mind. It's like you're constantly on high alert, trying to maintain this false image of yourself or your life. It's exhausting. Your mind is working overtime, constantly trying to reconcile the truth with the lie you're telling yourself. No wonder you feel drained at the end of the day. And it's not just stress. Anxiety becomes your constant companion when you're not honest with yourself. Think about it. When you're living a lie, part of you always knows the truth. It's like there's a little voice in the back of your head constantly whispering, what if they find out? What if it all falls apart? That's anxiety. And it's a direct result of the gap between your true self and the self you're pretending to be. I'm trying to teach you the secret of imagining and pretending. But we must come to grips with this gap because it may be the secret to truly creating a reality. You must understand cognitive dissonance. It's a simple concept. Cognitive dissonance is that uncomfortable feeling that you get when you hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time, or when your actions don't align with your beliefs. It is an epidemic. People are lying all the time and they're believing stuff that contradicts all the time. It's never been worse than it is right now. When you lie to yourself, you're creating a breeding ground for cognitive dissonance. You're constantly at odds with yourself, and your mind doesn't like it one bit. It's like trying to force two magnets together on their negative sides. There's always going to be resistance. This internal conflict doesn't stay in your head. It spills over into every aspect of your life. You might find yourself becoming irritable, having trouble sleeping, or struggling to make decisions because you're at war with yourself, and that battle takes a toll. The scary part is over time, these psychological effects can become your new normal. You might not even realize how stressed, anxious, or conflicted you feel because you've been living with it for so long. It's like the proverbial frog in the boiling water. The temperature rises so gradually that you don't notice that you're being cooked alive. It doesn't have to be this way. All of these psychological effects, the stress, the anxiety, the cognitive dissonance, they're not punishments, they're signals. They're your mind's way of telling you that something's off and you're not being true to yourself. So the next time you feel that stress, that anxiety, that internal conflict, don't just push it away, listen to it. It might be uncomfortable, but also it's an opportunity, it's a chance to look at yourself honestly, to face the truths you've been avoiding, and to start aligning your actions with your authentic self. Think about the last big decision that you had to make. Maybe it was about your career or a relationship or a major purchase. How did you approach it? If you're not being honest with yourself, I can almost guarantee that decision was harder than it needed to be. Good decision making relies on accurate information. It's like trying to put together a puzzle. If you got all the right pieces, you can see the big picture and figure out where everything fits. And when you're lying to yourself, it's like you're trying to solve that puzzle with pieces from different sets. Some might fit, but the overall picture is going to be a mess. Say you're in a job you hate, but you keep telling yourself it's not that bad. You're lying to yourself about the level of satisfaction, your skills, maybe even your long-term career goals. And now a new opportunity comes along. How can you possibly make a good decision about whether to take it when you're not being honest about your current situation? You can't. You're working with faulty information, and that's a recipe for a bad decision. It's not just big decisions. This impacts your everyday choices too. When you're not honest with yourself, you might avoid making decisions altogether. You procrastinate, you waffle, you ask everyone else for their opinion, because deep down, you don't trust your own judgment. Why would you? On some level, you know you're not being truthful with yourself. This is where self-deception really throws a wrench in the works. Effective problem solving requires you to accurately assess the situation, identify the real issues, and come up with viable solutions. But how can you do any of that if you're not being honest about what's going on? It's like having a leaky roof. You can convince yourself it's not that bad, that it only leaks when it rains really hard. You might even put a bucket under it and call it fixed. You can imagine that it's fixed, but you have not solved the problem. You just found a way to live with it. And guess what? That roof is still going to leak until you take action, and over time, it's going to cause more and more damage. That's what happens when you're not honest about the problems in your life. You find ways to work around them, to cope with them, but you never actually solve them. And just like that leaky roof, those unresolved problems are going to cause more damage over time. To properly imagine, you must properly understand what situation that you're in. And this sounds like a contradiction. As quote teaches us, the contradiction is where we find spiritual truth. There's a place where we know that we're imagining and we can feel the truth of this alternate reality. We start to move into it. But if we are not in an environment where we're being honest with ourselves and others, we can't trust where to go and what to do. When you're not honest about problems in your life, you find ways to work around them, to cope with them. When you're not honest with yourself, you often can't even see the real problem. You're so busy maintaining your self-deception that you miss the actual issue that needs addressing because you're so used to living this world of lies that you're not even aware that a problem's existing because you're not being honest with yourself. Then you can't properly imagine your way out of it. It's like being so focused on mopping up the water from your leaky roof that you don't notice the mold growing on your walls. It starts with honesty, raw, uncomfortable, sometimes painful honesty. Before you make a decision, try to solve a problem, take a step back, ask yourself, am I seeing this situation clearly? Am I being honest about my role in this? What am I avoiding or denying? It's not easy. In fact, it can be downright uncomfortable. But let me tell you, the clarity that comes from this kind of honesty, it's like putting on glasses for the first time and realizing the world isn't actually blurry. Suddenly decisions become clearer, and your ability to create your future becomes easier. Problems become solvable. You stop spinning your wheels and start making real progress. Remember, the goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be honest. When you're honest with yourself, you'll become a better decision maker and a more effective problem solver. You become someone who can face challenges head on, make tough choices with confidence, and actually solve problems instead of just coping with them. Think about the last time you were in a social situation where you felt like you were putting on an act. Maybe it was a work event where you were pretending to be more confident than you felt, or a family gathering where you were hiding your true feelings about your job or relationship. It's exhausting. And that's because you're not being true to yourself, and every interaction becomes a performance. You're constantly monitoring what you say and do, making sure it aligns with the image you're trying to project. It's like you're on stage, but instead of enjoying the spotlight, you're terrified of forgetting your lines. This doesn't just exhaust you, it pushes people away. People can sense when you're not being genuine. Even if they can't put their finger on why, they might not trust you, or they might find you hard to connect with. And can you blame them? You're not showing them the real you. But it goes deeper than that. When you're lying to yourself, you often end up attracting the wrong people into your life. Think about it. If you're pretending to be someone you're not, you'll draw in people who are attracted to that false version of you. Then you find yourself in relationships, romantic, friendly, or professional, that don't truly satisfy you because they're not based on your authentic self. Self-deception is like a wall you build between yourself and the people you care about. You might think you're protecting yourself or them, but in reality, you're creating distance. You're denying them the chance to know and love the real you. And this includes embracing others who are constantly lying knowingly and accepting it. It affects you because that is an acknowledgement, an acceptance that it's okay for you to do that. This is especially damaging in close relationships. If you're not honest with yourself about your needs, your feelings, or your struggles, how can you communicate these to your partner, your family, your close friends? You end up feeling misunderstood and unsupported, but the truth is you haven't given them the chance to understand and support the real you. In your personal life, persistent self-deception over the long term can lead to a profound sense of disconnection from yourself and from others. So many people are alone in the world. So many people are feeling disconnected. Maybe it is because of this persistent self-deception. And embracing those who lie and accepting it as a lifestyle, accepting that it's okay to lie, when deep down in your subconscious you know it's not. You might find yourself going through motions, living a life that looks good on paper but feels empty inside. You might wrestle with a constant, nagging feeling that you're not living up to your potential, or that you're living someone else's idea of what your life should be. Professionally, the consequences can be just as severe. When you're not honest with yourself about your strengths, weaknesses, and true passions, you might find yourself on a career path that looks successful from the outside but leaves you feeling unfulfilled. You might miss out on opportunities that would truly excite you because you're convinced that you're not qualified or truly deserving. Self-deception can stunt your professional growth. If you're not honest about areas where you need to improve, how can you ever truly excel? You might find yourself hitting a ceiling in your career, watching others progress, while you stay stuck, all because you're not willing to look in the mirror and confront the truths about yourself that could help you to grow. I've discovered this in my own life. That's why I'm teaching it to you. if I wasn't truly honest about what I was doing wrong, what mistakes I was making, the things I was focusing on, I could not move forward in my life. It is never too late to change this pattern. I do not care how old you are. The moment you decide to be honest with yourself, it is such a relief. It's the moment you start to turn things around. And then when you start to affirm things, it's amazing because you believe it. When you say, large sums of money come to me easily and quickly, you know it's true because you have been honest with yourself up to this point. You may be aware of your current situation, but you can say, large sums of money come to me easily and quickly. When you don't believe yourself, you will not believe that statement. It is an affirmation that is given in vain with vain repetitions. You might have to make some tough decisions. You might have to change the way you think about issues in the world. When you come to grips with whether or not you're being honest with yourself and you're embracing dishonesty and misinformation, and you're saying to yourself, it's okay because this misinformation somehow helps me, or this lying helps me, and you embrace this, it's going to take some tough decisions to really confront this. It's rarely done. A good place to look at this is in a cult. Oftentimes they find cult members that know the information that they've been given is a lie, yet they continue to believe it because it is a pattern so deeply entrenched, they're incapable of accepting the truth that this thing that they believe is not true. And so it's not comfortable, and we naturally do not seek discomfort. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. Freedom to be yourself, to pursue what truly matters to you, to build genuine connections, and to reach your full potential. Every step towards self-honesty is a step towards a more authentic, fulfilling life. It's not about being perfect, it's about being real. And in a world full of filters and facades, being real is your superpower. As I do with many of my podcasts, I recommend you journal about this. Put it on paper. Put it in your notes on your phone. It's like having a conversation with yourself, but on paper. And you can go back and read this, and you can start to see the pattern in your own deceptions. Start journaling with a question like, what I'm really feeling right now is, and just let it flow. Don't censor yourself. Don't worry about spelling or grammar. Just notice when you're being dishonest with yourself. This process is a process of self-awareness. Another technique is the third-person perspective. Imagine you're writing a story about yourself, but you're using he or she instead of I. It might sound silly, but this little shift can give you a much-needed distance from your own thoughts and behaviors. It's like you're observing yourself from the outside, which can lead to some pretty eye-opening insights. Of course, there's meditation. It's about noticing your thoughts without getting caught up in them. Even 5 minutes a day where you're evaluating in your meditation honesty, truth, sitting quietly, focusing on your breath. You'll begin to see patterns in your thinking. You'll notice the stories you tell yourself, the excuses you make, the fears that you're holding back. That's the first step to change. Another thing you can do is have a conversation with your future self. Close your eyes and imagine yourself 5, 10, 20 years from now. And what would that version of you say to the current you? What advice would they give? What would they be proud of? What would they wish you had done differently? Can you believe them? If you're more of a visual person, create a mind map of your life. Start with your name in the center and then branch out into different areas: work, relationships, health, hobbies. Are you where you want to be? If not, what's holding you back? This visual representation can help you see connections and patterns you might have missed before. Another thing is to ask for feedback. Ask people who will be honest with you, trusted friends, mentors, even colleagues. Ask them what they see as your strengths and weaknesses. When you are choosing honesty, when you talk to your friends, you can believe them. If you're choosing dishonesty, you're choosing to lie yourself, but also to support people that lie on a regular basis. When you do that, then you're going to meet people in your life and you're not going to trust them because, geez, everybody is lying all the time. But you can get honest advice, honest communication from people that you trust that will tell you where you are, what you can do. I want you to take a moment right now, take a deep breath and ask yourself, where in my life have I not been completely honest with myself? Maybe it's about a relationship that's not working, a job that's slowly crushing your soul, or a dream you've been too afraid to pursue. Whatever it is, I want you to promise yourself that you'll take one step towards facing that truth this week. You might be thinking, but what if the truth hurts? What if it means I have to make changes I'm not ready for? It might hurt. It might be scary. Let me tell you something. On the other side of that fear is freedom. The freedom to be who you truly are, to live life on your own terms, to pursue what really matters to you. It's not about beating yourself up or dwelling on your mistakes. It's about giving yourself the gift of authenticity. It's about aligning your outer world with your inner truth. When you do that, that's when the magic happens. How much energy have you spent maintaining illusions about yourself or your life? How exhausting has it been to keep up appearances, to pretend everything's fine when it's not? Now imagine channeling all that energy into actually living your life, into pursuing your passions, creating your reality, building genuine relationships. That's the power of aligning with your true self. When you're aligned with your true self, you stop swimming against the current of your own life. Decisions become clear, relationships become deeper, success, fulfilling becomes possible because you're no longer chasing someone else's definition of it. And so my challenge to you is start small, but start today. Maybe it's having a conversation that you've been avoiding. Maybe it's writing that brutally honest journal entry. Maybe it's finally admitting to yourself what you really want out of your life. Whatever it is, take that first step. And remember, this isn't a one and done. This is a practice, a lifelong journey. There will be setbacks. There will be days when it's easier to fall back into old patterns. But each time you choose honesty, each time you align with your true self, you are building a stronger foundation for a more authentic and fulfilling life. And that's when you can truly imagine. You've got this. Got everything you need with you to live a life of radical self-honesty. And trust me, once you start, you won't want to go back, because there's nothing more liberating, nothing more powerful than being unapologetically, authentically you. So stop lying to yourself. Step into your truth. Now is the time. The choice is yours, and I can't wait to see who you become when you fully embrace the real you. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.